Good and decent people of YouTube, welcome to Political Drain, where we sift through the sewage at the end of a long pipeline of corporate media in order to expose the liars and the charlatans hell-bent on manipulating you for power and for profit. My name is Bruce Lively, and no, you're not crazy. Today, we're going to talk about the historical first African-American and second woman Harvard president, Dr. Claudine Gay. And equally as historical, Dr. Gay also breaks the record for the shortest tenure as Harvard president. We're going to talk about why she was made to resign, the people behind it, right-wing hypocrisy, left-wing hypocrisy, and the broken, pig-faced, teleprompter actor-filled media reminiscent of Ron Burgundy that can never seem to recognize either one. There's twists, there's turns, so if you hear something you don't agree with, just stick with me till the end, because I guarantee you it's not going to be whatever you think it is. So let's get started. Bill Ackman, the billionaire hedge fund manager who made his name as an aggressive activist investor, his term, not mine, used Twitter to put public pressure on Harvard to get rid of Dr. Gay for supposedly plagiarizing something in her dissertation. Him and another powerful right-wing activist named Christopher Rufo led the charge together. Now, around the same time, protests by Harvard students against the arbitrary revenge killing of innocent Palestinians broke out. Dr. Gay didn't stop it, and those two didn't like it. Now immediately, if those two names don't bring up Olympic-sized red flags when it comes to firing black people from leadership positions, it should. Ackman has been publicly fighting against every public institution and corporation in an effort to destroy all signs of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm so surprised. Look, when people with eyes say, "That looks racist to me," he denies being driven by racism in his campaign against Dr. Gay, saying that the efforts to bring more people of color into positions of power are themselves racist, because in his view, they discriminate against white people. Okay, now conservatives, you're not allowed to fast forward this because remember, I said there's twists and turns, and when I get to the parts you do like, you're not gonna wanna miss them. But for now, let me quote Mr. Ackman with the amount of contempt I think this next statement deserves. You can handle it. Here's the quote. "DEI is racist because reverse racism is racism, even if it's against white people. Racism against white people has become considered acceptable by many not to be racism, or alternatively, it is deemed acceptable racism." Now, I don't have enough time in this video to explain why the words diversity, equity, and inclusion are literally the opposite of what he just said. But at least we all can agree that calling for the firing of the first black president of Harvard from the person who says those things publicly should at the very least invite a measure of skepticism and investigation before believing any claims of plagiarism so egregious that it rises to the level of termination. Right? Can we agree on that? But here's the truth. This was a diabolical plan set in place by two people who used disinformation, money, power, fear-mongering as a tactic to keep their own power and keep anyone who doesn't look or think like them away from power at all costs. Okay? And it worked. It worked. The stupid, pig-faced teleprompter actors and wet-feathered pens at the New York Times and the Washington Post fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. If you don't believe me, here's the plan, laid out by Christopher Rufo himself. Reading from the LA Times here. What's most shocking about the failure of the press to recognize what's happening is that the leaders of the cabal are completely open about their goals and their methods. Here, for instance, is a manifesto by odious Christopher F. Rufo, the leader of the braying mob that chased after Gay. Quote, "We launched the Claudine Gay plagiarism story from the right," he stated on X, formerly Twitter, on December 19th. The next step is to smuggle it into the media apparatus of the left, legitimizing the narrative to center-left actors who have the power to topple her, then squeeze, unquote. Wow. Okay? The allegations of plagiarism are overblown and are merely the stop and frisk pretext here of Christopher Russo and Bill Ackman using disinformation and misinformation about CRT and wokeness to discredit qualified persons of color and have them leave or be removed from their positions, all in an effort to dumb down the school system, erase and or whitewash history, and take equal rights back to the 50s or worse. And the right-wing hypocrisy? Listen, this is awesome. I'm going to let this awesome YouTuber named Politics by Tabitha explain before we get to the left-wing hypocrisy, which to me might even be worse. I promised you conservatives, you will be rewarded for your patience. But here's Tabitha. Link in the description to her channel. Check it out.
Neri Oxman is the wife to the billionaire Bill Ackman. And Business Insider was reporting that Neri had plagiarized some portions of her dissertation. Business Insider did a follow-up report and found that Neri plagiarized from Wikipedia without citing the original in any way. At least 15 passages from her 2010 MIT doctoral dissertation. First, he believes that people at MIT leaked this information. So if he believes that, then he knew his wife was a plagiarist. Now, he's also pissed off with the people over at Business Insider, and he's vowing retribution and wants everybody fired over at Business Insider.
The plagiarism isn't the problem, and it never was. Now, let's talk about how the most left-wing of us, both in the media and on YouTube and everywhere else, has been downright dangerous in their hypocrisy, self-destructive, and showing the world an unbelievable lack of self-awareness at the least. You see, the protests at Harvard were a time-honored staple of democracy, but Dr. Gay was called to testify in the Senate about it. And instead of honoring that legacy with clear and righteous answers to the questions posed by Republican Elise Stefanik, she was decidedly unclear, self-righteous, racist, and arrogant with every word. Huh? Liberals, it's your turn to listen. There are still more twists and turns to come, but you're gonna have to just sit through this one, okay?
And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, targeted at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of antisemitism? I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric.
And is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
Now, I don't know if I can properly convey the level of head explosion that the right wing had after hearing that. I also think it's important that you understand they are 100% right to be outraged. I know that there were many on the left who weren't very happy about what you just saw, and they were vocal about it. But most also felt that her ineffectiveness in responding to the allegations over antisemitism on campus did not in any fashion warrant the huge backlash, racial and other threats, and gloating by Elise Stefanik in the GOP. I say, you're wrong. That was gross. That was racist and disqualifying in its incompetence. Because if that was the orange hamburglar, otherwise known as Donald Trump, in that seat and said that, every last one of you would have fainted where you stood. There would be a Lincoln Project commercial out right now on it. It would have taken 10 minutes to make. MSNBC, CNN, The Midas Touch, Pac-Man, Dollamore, and TYT would actually all agree on the same thing at the same time for the first time in 5 years, if that was the orange hamburglar Donald Trump. If there ever was a fireable offense, that was it. If there was anything that would immediately disqualify you as a leader in academic policy at any institution worth anything, that was it. You see, the first allegations of anti-Semitism were completely baseless. Even the Jewish executive director, Bernie Steinberg, recognized the allegations for what they were. But my God, people, after that congressional hearing, I would have fired her immediately. But here is the final twist. Harvard should never have accepted her resignation. I know. You think I'm crazy, but hear me out. I personally would have fired her before she got off the plane, period. But Harvard shouldn't have, because this isn't the first time a teacher, faculty member, tenured teacher have done this and worse and have never been fired for it. Plagiarism? Yeah, that's been done. No firing. Harvard faculty member Doris Kearns Goodwin committed arguably more egregious examples of plagiarism in 2002 and emerged with her employment and reputation intact. With Harvard's help, mind you. Racism? No, not at all. According to Harvard's own publication, February 17th, 1988, Professor of History Stephen Thernstrom was accused, proven to have all kinds of ridiculous racist classes, like slavery kind of helped people, or that it wasn't really that bad, or things like Reconstruction, not that bad, or things like black people were better off at this time. I mean, just gross stuff. You can read it for yourself. It's published by Harvard. In that publication, the reason for that publication was to defend him. Their words are, Thernstrom only provoking original thought. So yeah, it turns out it doesn't matter what I think should have been done. As someone whose job it is to be objective and tell you the truth, the conclusion is clear. Harvard failed its first black president as much as she failed herself. I'll see you in the next one.